Film Club.
Thank you for joining me for a very odd episode of Film Club. I'm not in the studio, Andy's not with me today, I'm just on my own, but we're here to talk about Spider-Man Homecoming. How can we not talk about another Spider-Man film? So I thought you might enjoy looking at some trailer footage more so than looking at my living room. So I'm going to try and keep this a little more visually interesting by keeping trailers on screen a little bit more than normal. Hope you enjoy. Let's start with the big one. Cast. Cast in this film is actually quite superb. Tom Holland is a great Spider-Man of this age. Like if you're going to go for a 15-year-old Spider-Man who's just starting out, Tom Holland's a perfect choice. He is charismatic, he's witty, he's also a little bit awkward. He's got that perfect balance for Peter Parker. I don't think they probably could have cast a better role. He's also going to slot in quite nicely, I think, with a lot of the Avengers. So spot on for Tom Holland. The surrounding cast. So you've got his best friend, who's based on Gank from the comic books. In this film, they're calling him Ned Leeds. He's wonderful. He's a really nice, like comic relief that comes and goes as the film needs him. The other big one, Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Really good performance, actually. It's not going to blow anyone away. It's not going to be like this performance we're all harkening back to, like, oh, remember the Vulture performance. But it's great to see a Spider-Man villain which still feels like a classic Spider-Man villain, but also feels different from what has come before. He's not like a scientist gone mad like we've had a few times now, more than a few times. Tony Stark. You've got Robert Downey Jr. in this film as Iron Man yet again. When he's on screen, he's good. I actually wouldn't say he's great. I don't know if it's the director who can't quite direct Robert Downey Jr.'s style of comedy. There's something feels a little bit forced about it. Almost like he's not properly reacting to how Tom Holland is talking to him. Almost like he's just doing his own thing, and then he leaves the film for like another 20 minutes and then pops back in again to say something. And he never really feels like he's connecting with the rest of the cast. Story-wise, it's an absolute mixed bag. Like you've got parts of the film which work wonderfully. Things start to feel like a unique Spider-Man film again, and that is so rare at this point. We've had 5. We've had 5 Spider-Man films, all of which had a lot of similarities. In a lot of ways, all of them felt quite samey. This one stands out as being a completely different feeling Spider-Man story. Yeah, we're still balancing school life and Aunt May and fighting crime as a superhero, but now we're building into a larger world of the Avengers. Tony Stark's directly affecting Peter. Everyone seems to know by now that Tony Stark has given Peter the spider costume that he uses for the film, and that brings a lot of humor, a lot of interesting elements with it. I say interesting for not wanting to spoil this, but they start to play in a realm which has kind of been present in the Spider-Man comics but not properly explored in the films. But I think there might be a reason for those things not being properly explored in the films. They start to get away from the core beliefs of what Spider-Man is as a character, and that's where this film starts to fall down. A lot of the emotional resonance that was present in previous films, things like Spider-Man 1, you had the death of the Green Goblin. Spider-Man 2, you had that train sequence. Even Spider-Man 3 with some of the Sandman stuff. Like even Amazing Spider-Man had it with some of the stuff that was going on with Doc Connors and Captain Stacy. Then even Amazing Spider-Man 2, a film which people often talk about as being a terrible film, and rightfully so, it is a pretty bad film, but that still has the Gwen Stacy clock tower death scene, which just resonates on a wonderfully emotional level. This film is actually the first Spider-Man film I think that is completely devoid of all of that emotional resonance. Even the connection to Aunt May it's strong, but there is no deeper connection there. The relationship that Peter has with his friend Ned is great to see. It's a different twist on the Spider-Man formula that we haven't yet seen, but you could also remove it from the film and it almost has no impact. And then unfortunately, this all leads to the ending. Now, we are going to stay spoiler-free, but I have to say this is probably the weakest ending for a Spider-Man film ever. Not to say everything leading up to it isn't good. There is a lot of good stuff in this film, but the ending starts to lack consequence. It starts to lack choice. It starts to lack purpose. And it's almost like the story forgets where it was supposed to be going. If you actually look at the end of this film, it is written by 4 or 5 different writers, and I think that starts to show. I don't know if that's a choice made by the filmmakers purposefully or if that's something forced upon them by this Sony-Marvel deal. That Sony-Marvel deal has also led to a lot of integration from the Avengers. There's a lot of references back to what happened in Avengers 1. There's a lot of references back to Iron Man and Thor and Hulk. A lot of it works. It does start to bog the film down, especially when you have multiple characters turning up in Spider-Man Homecoming from different films, and they start to take scenes away and screen time away from story which is already underdeveloped. I think as a whole, this starts to leave the film feeling like a good Spider-Man film. Maybe it's even a great Spider-Man film at times, but it never gets to become an excellent Spider-Man film. Why that is, I'm not sure right now. I'm going to go have a think about this. I'm going to mull it over. I'm going to figure out what it is about this film which isn't quite resonating. But for now, initial thoughts coming straight out of the film, this is a good Spider-Man film. I'm glad to see this back on track. I'm glad to see Spider-Man in what can be considered a good film again. There's also a little bit of a shame that we're not looking at a resurgence in Spider-Man. This isn't Spider-Man in his golden day, nor do I think we'll see him there again for a while. Thank you for joining me for a very odd episode of Film Club. We're back to normal next Thursday. If you have any thoughts on Spider-Man Homecoming, if you think it's a wonderful film, if you think it's a terrible film, please let us know in the comments below, because I really want to know how people feel about this film. We will see you next week for Film Club. Thank you very much for joining us.